Hello. Thank you for all who have just joined us and for those who were on previously zooming into our virtual tour. Now begins the gallery talk portion of this virtual event that is associated with Meredith College Art Department faculty and staff exhibition. My name is Molly Hull. I was the star of the virtual tour and I am the gallery director as well. This faculty and staff exhibition is unique because it gives current and recent professors, staff members, and artists and residents the opportunity to show off their own artistic talents, which they practice while simultaneously being dedicated to educating our students on a daily basis. The media represented in this exhibition includes everything from fiber installation, fiber sculptures, weaving, film, drawing, graphic design, and painting. And this vast list of media really reflects the courses that are offered within the Meredith Art Department itself. And this exhibition also includes artwork that came out of courses that these professors have taught. So it gives us a chance to kind of really dive into the courses itself and see what products come out of them. So we begin our gallery talk with all 15 artists shortly. Each artist will have about 3 to 5 minutes to talk about their artwork in the exhibition. If we were actually in person, we could be in the gallery in a circle, but this is about as close as we can get at the moment. So I'm truly grateful for everyone that is on this Zoom session, and I hope that you all enjoy it. Along with the artist talking, you, the viewer, will also see a slide with their artwork. And the photographs included on the slide were taken by our photography assistant, Ana Ramirez. They are meant to emulate the artwork within the actual space themselves. So we will hold questions until the end. And if you have a burning question, feel free to type it in the chat box during the talk and know that it will be answered at the end. At this point, it's important that all participants go ahead and mute themselves. You're welcome to keep open your video and also make sure that your chat box feature is on as well. And I will go ahead and share my screen and then turn it over to our first artist in the lineup, Holly Fisher. Okay. Without further ado, Holly Fisher.
Hello, I am really happy to be with you today. Thank you all for joining us. I am Holly Fisher. I teach primarily ceramics and sculpture. I'm also one of the mentors for the Artist in Residency program. I'm going to take just a couple minutes to talk to you about each of the sculptures. I'll start with Becoming. Ideally, I would love for you to be able to see these sculptures in the round. They are intended to be viewed in the round, and Becoming is about a relationship dynamic. So as you walk around this form, you see the two figures interacting with each other, but the interaction is ambiguous. It could be a mating dance. It could also be a confrontation, an aggressive standoff. Another interpretation, which is the one that speaks to me, is that they're both the same person. It's about rebirth, about shedding one skin and emerging or growing into a new figure, and what you hold on to and what you release in order to rebirth yourself. So it's about growth and evolution and the perpetual process of becoming, which is where the title comes from. Bewitch, right below it, is another reflection on duality. As you walk around this form, if you could, and I hope you can make it to the gallery at some point to do that, it transforms from a nubile maiden silhouette, which is what you see in the photo here. As you move around the form, it becomes a hooded crone. So this sculpture for me is about the beauty paradox that women face. Culturally, we glorify the sensual appeal of feminine youth and beauty while vilifying and mistrusting the aging female form. We're stuck in a black and white binary where we associate worth with that beauty and youth, and we overlook the wisdom and power of female age. It's my opinion that the best thing that we can do as women is to stop buying into the demand to be ageless and begin to own the magic and power of growing older. Love Triangle, the 3 stone carvings, came out of my sculpture class. I started doing them as demos for my sculpture students when I teach stone carving. I really enjoyed working on them. They're also about transformation, which I think is an inherent part of carving a stone. You begin with a rock and you have to transform it, release the sculpture that is buried within. I was also looking at ancient fertility idols and the rituals and sensuality associated with those idols. So this trio merges anatomical features, and the anatomical features are ambiguous in places and more literal in other places. There's a fluidity to them. And this series is about fluidity on multiple levels, be it gender fluidity, sexual fluidity, or even the fluidity of love bonds. Nothing in our human experience is ever static, and I would love to embrace and celebrate our ability to perpetually evolve and change. Thank you so much. And now I would like to introduce my colleague, Cameron Johnson.
So hello, everybody. I teach, well, first of all, thank you guys for joining us as we share our work. I'm extremely excited about the opportunity. I teach painting, drawing, printmaking, and the 2D class at Meredith College. And I guess with the work that I displayed, I really want to just show my love of mixed media and the way different medium can be used to tell a story or present an idea. The first one I'll talk about is the Untitled. This is actually a demo that I do every year. So in the painting class, we do a glazing technique where we do thin layers of oil paint in order to build up layers to create more of a realistic form. And so this actually was the painting I did last semester in class. And a funny situation was that knowing that I normally do a demo, I didn't prepare for photograph anything. So I just put a mirror up and I was about to start painting and I realized that we were all wearing masks. And so I couldn't even do my own features, but at the same time, it was kind of like I was so used to wearing the mask that it almost became a part of, our culture, the time we're in right now. So I just thought it'd be appropriate to put it in there. And as I started painting, it started having other meanings and I don't know, it just started to reflect something bigger than just a self-portrait. So I thought it'd be interesting to put that into the show. And then also just the use of color. I really love to layer color. I love the way color interacts. And so I really thought that it was just something that really displayed that technique that we did in class. Systems and Symbols is a group of paintings. It's actually a beginning of a series. I want to do more of these. Had a hard time deciding how many to put in the show, but it's something that I want to continue. And it's just a conversation about how we identify, what we identify with, and the things we omit, right? So I think in our pursuit of things, we sometimes forget that there's two sides to everything. So I really didn't want to be, I guess it's in a sense, I wanted to be confrontational, but at the same time, um, I want everybody to be able to take their own stand, have their own opinion about it. I think the diptych, the first one, Systems and Symbols 1, clearly shows that there's two sides to how we view freedom and liberty, and what that looks like, and those who have freedom and those who feel like they're not given the same opportunity as others. And so wanted to have the same composition, the same structure, but show different aspects. The first one is all paint. The second one is actually a mixture of charcoal, collage, um, and there's a little bit of ink, watercolor in there as well. And then the last one is all acrylic painting with some charcoal mixed in. Actually, it has watercolor pencils as well. So just wanted to really utilize medium. I really, again, as I said in my intro, I really like the way that different medium can create different textures, different effects. So that was the main idea behind those. Um, and I really wanted this group of work to reflect the times. I've always been a big fan of the images that really grab you from the civil rights movement in the early 19th century. those things you just can't look away from. And it's just amazing that, looking at the news, following what's going on during this time that I never thought of myself of being in the same kind of or a similar time or a similar kind of feeling as far as our social unrest and just what goes on within our country. So just wanted to capture that moment, capture that feeling, some of the frustrations, and put that all into work. So I think that's the best way to describe it. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that would pretty much be the the main components of what the work is about. So at this point, I will turn it over. Actually, I forgot, who do I turn this over? I'm going to switch it over to. Can't remember who's next, Molly.
Me,
Kiki,
Kiki.
yes, he's right behind me. Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm Kiki Farish and I teach drawing at Meredith, and I'm so glad to be here. Glad to be at Meredith teaching. I'm a graduate, class of 1981. Yikes, 40 years this year. So I hope we get to have a reunion. I am struck by how Paleolithic statues have articulated vulvas. They're small and they're easily carried, and they take no pains to hide their sexuality. So, why is it that in American culture and Western culture, and well, in today's world, that we don't really know much about the female body, and we consider it this mysterious thing, and essentially, it's just because we don't teach it. And how important is it? Because um, we have representatives in our democracy who find it important to make laws on the female body. And so, how can we as citizens elect representatives when we don't know about the female body? Um, so I think vulva education is really important, and I want to move it out of the margins. I've had my Meredith drawing students for years draw the American flag. Um, it's got great cross contours. And I saw a student's drawing who had the flag sort of crumpled in the middle of the format last fall, and I found it very inspiring. So these three are based on that inspiration from a student's drawing. Um, I use pencil because it's a very democratic tool, one that everyone's had experience with. And I think that conceptually that is important with the idea that female bodies are common. we we so value the unborn, but we can't have the unborn without the mother. And I think that we need to treat our mothers with reverence, um, the reverence that they deserve. So that's what my work's about. My next colleague is Shannon Johnstone.
Hi, welcome. I'm Shannon Johnstone. I teach photography and computer literacy for design, among other courses. I've been at Meredith since 2002, so it's been a while now. And this work that's featured in the exhibition is some brand new stuff that I did in collaboration with a writer named Terry Saylor, who I think is here now, which I'm really excited about that she's listening to. She wrote this story and I illustrated it. So the way this came about was I had started sharing lots of pictures of a new puppy that we adopted. I'm a big animal lover, and so animals are featured in my artwork all the time. And Terry took the pictures I was sharing and compiled them and created a narrative around it, where, one of our older dogs felt jealous of this new puppy that we had and decided to run away. And so, it turns out the puppy has this superpower, and she goes and helps save him. And It's just a really beautiful story. So I was really excited to be able to bring images to it. So it was a true collaboration in the sense that, you know, that I would make a picture and she would edit the story a little bit, and then she would edit the story a little bit, and then I would edit the pictures. We'd go back and forth like that. And this all happened since the pandemic. So it was really a great way to kind of have our creative juices flowing, even though we were apart. So you're looking at, before we move on, I just there's the actual book is in the exhibition, and these are three prints that I made of different scenes in the story. Should have said that to begin with. Okay, the next person is, I think, who is the next person? Lydia? Emily Howard, never mind. Emily.
Hi. Okay, I'm Emily Howard, and I am a fiber artist. I teach textiles and weaving at Meredith, and I'm also one of the artist in residence mentors. And I'm excited to see so many different weavings in this exhibition. I think it's the most weaving we've ever had in an exhibition. And I have been a textile artist for a really long time, but the weaving for me is fairly new, I guess, in the past, say, 10 years or so. And I really was inspired to weave myself because of teaching weaving. So I wanted to say that before I talked about the pieces in this exhibition. The first one, Weighing Me Down, is a installation or wall sculpture. It's 2D and 3D, which I like to work with a lot of different media, and as well as somewhere in between a 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional work. This piece began as a look into the history of women's work. So really looking at the history of textiles, fibers, and all of the implications that come along with that. And as I was working on it over the past few months, where we're in this COVID time, I really started to think about all the different little things that women have had to do over the years, everyday little things that sort of add up and maybe start making you feel like it's weighing you down. So I wanted the installation to really take on that look of being weighed down. So you'll see a weaving in the center with kind of a bullseye, and the imagery in both of the weavings are simple symbols that we can all relate to: circles, diamonds, crosses, symbols that we've seen throughout artwork and humanity. Along with the symbols, I'm thinking a lot about stories and traditions and histories and how they kind of come back around and we see them again in the future. So as I was creating this weaving, Weighing Me Down, I had also read an article about how right now women are sort of taking on a lot of things that they didn't expect to take on due to the fact that all of our kids are at home, or you're working from home, but also taking care of other people. And that idea of weighing me down really took on a whole new meaning with that. In the next piece, it's called Old Wives' Tale, which I was sort of thinking about all of the different tales that are told and how specifically textiles and fibers are represented in the art world, or not represented sometimes, and how it's often connected to women and again, women's work. And this piece started out as a found object. The center where the diamond is, it has it's attached to what is an old pitchfork type tool that was used in farming. And I like the idea of the found object, the ready-made mixed with the handmade. So all of the yarn and fibers in this are hand dyed, natural dyed. And in the center, you have rocks surrounding this piercing into the earth. And the tale that the old wives' tale that I was thinking of in this is, I think Molly was talking about how I talked about the needle that people would swing over a woman's belly and to find out whether or not they were having a boy or a girl. So if it swung one way, it would be a girl, and the other way it would be a boy. And just another one of those tales that has to do with women. And next up, we have Lydia Brown, who is an artist in residence.
Hi, thank you, Emily. My name is Lydia Brown, and I'm currently an artist in residence at Meredith, and this is my second semester of getting to be in the residency program. And my focus in the residency has been sculpture and ceramics, but I also love making fiber art. And so this piece is a weaving that I made, and a lot of my work combines sculpture and fibers together, like using clay or metal and adding a woven or fiber element to it. So my piece in the show is called Trepanation. And if you don't know what that is, trepanation refers to an ancient practice of drilling a hole into the skull that was meant to be used as a form of relief for head wounds, seizures, headaches, different things like that. But some cultures also thought it had a spiritual element to it. Some thought that you could release an evil spirit or a demon through the head by drilling this hole. And this practice was used in cultures all over the world. Archaeologists have found evidence of it on lots of different continents, and they've even found skulls from prehistoric times that have evidence of this procedure being carried out. So while we may not know the exact reason that it happened in some of these very ancient places and cultures, it's something that has occurred all over the world and for a very long time of history. And so I made this piece as a way to reflect on and think about my experience and relationship with having chronic migraines. And so I wanted it to reflect the desire to relieve this pain physically, but also emotionally, and to make a connection to others who may experience this same migraine, headache type pain, or any other kind of physical pain that also has this very strong emotional weight to it. And so this piece is made with primarily hand-dyed fibers. I used a lot of natural dyes like madder root and cochineal to get these rich, warm, pink, red, and purple colors that are very visceral, and they reflect the colors of the human body, colors that you might see on the inside or the outside of the body. And I used different fibers like wool and cotton and linen, as well as raw silk and silk organza. And by tearing these fibers or kind of distressing them, I attempted to make this sort of tattered and kind of distressed look to the piece. And I was trying to show how something that may have once been a bit more beautiful looking, like the original way that these fibers looked when they were first dyed, can be sort of changed or altered and kind of distressed in a way through this tearing and through this kind of, I even sort of rubbed some dirt on some areas of this piece to give it this tattered look, to again reflect the way that you may feel that your body is working against you sometimes because it's causing you this pain that you don't really understand where it's coming from. and how that reflects back in how you may feel emotionally or mentally, and how that also carries a big weight. And so I also added some found object metal pieces, like some different pieces of metal rebar and some different shapes of random cut scrap metal that I found at Meredith and our metal scrapyard. And I also included some little drill bits that I had found as well, to kind of give a subtle reflection back to this idea of the drilling of the hole in the head, and ultimately to kind of say that while thankfully this practice is no longer used today because it's very violent and dangerous, it's something that I can relate to as wanting to relieve that pain, even if it made you go to an extreme measure to do that. So that's my piece in the show. And I would just like to take a minute to say to any current or former Meredith art students that I would love to recommend that you apply to the residency program if you ever get a chance to or would like to explore that. It's a wonderful chance to continue working with media that you love, such as fibers, sculpture, ceramics, but you can do other things too, like painting or printmaking. And it's also a great chance to get to be back in the Meredith environment, and get to work with other artists and with professors and students. And it's just a very supportive environment that also gives you a really great chance to grow in your practice as an artist. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for thinking or looking at my piece and listening to my talk. And next up we have Deb Lobby.
Thank you, Lydia. Hello, everyone. I'm Deb Lobby. At Meredith College, I am the departmental assistant for the art department. I am also a fiber artist and have worked with fibers most of my life. Crocheting, embroidery, sewing, cross-stitch, weaving. I enjoy them all, but I think that weaving may be in my genes, so to speak. There was a great aunt somewhere in the family who had a loom in her back bedroom. My pieces in today's exhibition are MIL, The View Out My Window, and Layers. I'd like to start with MIL. It's my first fiber sculpture, and it means Marjorie is loved, and it was made in honor of my mother. The warp was hand-dyed, and the weft was scarves from her copious scarf collection. It was created on a floor loom, and it was a double weave, which means that simultaneously you're weaving 2 layers. And you can manipulate while you're weaving so that it closes either within the cloth itself or on the edges. I chose to do the break or the together of the 2 layers after each scarf was woven to a certain inch mark. And once it was done, taken off of the loom, it was immersed in starch glue, and paper towel. The center of the paper towel roll was used with saran wrap covering it and placed in the center of each of the little tubes that the breaks made. And once it hardened, the tubes could come out and the structure was solid. I then adorned it with pieces of jewelry from my mother's jewel box, and put a few of the leftover scarves around the bottom. I truly love this piece. I feel it's quite beautiful and colorful and strong, like my mom. The next piece I'd like to speak about is The View Out My Window. This joins 2 interests that I have, the weaving as well as taking pictures of the sky. They are woven on a tabletop loom and then placed in the frame. The skies are so beautiful at any time of day. They have the ability to give great cloud shapes. The hues in the sky and the contrasting landscapes give you amazing supply of potential art. And when I did the weavings, the depth of the colors, the yarn, the ability to weave them together made it look so real that even touching it made you think you were looking at touching a sunset or a sunrise. The orange and the blue one is Oceanside, California, and the bottom one is Creedmoor, North Carolina. The last piece I have in the show is called Layers. It's a fiber wall hanging that took the dregs or the outcasts from previous projects and gave them a second life. I used dyed pieces, indigo dyed. I used a few batik pieces. I even did some ice dyeing and it's in there. Yarn, sewing trims that were too short to use on anything else. Lace, I embroidered and hand and machine sewed them. As I was playing with them and figuring out what position to put things on, I thought about layers and how we have many layers in our life. We're a partner, we're a daughter, we're a wife or a mother. And you see certain layers all the time, but there are other layers that you don't ever see. So looking for them as you would look for some of the batik underneath the sheer maroon colored fabric is just important in this piece as it is looking at another human being and knowing that there's another layer underneath them. That's all for me today. Thank you for coming to this session. I would like to now introduce our next artist, who is a painter and a jeweler, Kate Laughlin.
Wow, thank you, Deb. I'm not sure that I've ever heard you talk about your work. I need a moment. I love what you said about the layers and what is there that you don't automatically see. And I feel like that may be a good segue into my work. And I was unprepared for that, but it's so true. So I did my residency last semester with Cameron Johnson and helped in the painting studio, which I really, really miss. Fortunately, I can say that I've still kept up my practice, and these two paintings are a reflection of that. So during my time at Meredith as a student, I can really attribute that to what I learned about what I really wanted to do with painting. I was taking art history with Dr. Mulvaney, and then I'd go upstairs and paint with Mr. Johnson and then have figure drawing all in the same day. And it was so inspiring. It was a time in my life I felt like a sponge, and it was such a great connection. And I knew how passionate I was about all three. So combining them was really important to me. In my work, I love the light source and the contrast, and I love the way that can almost be just as, if not more important than the subjects of the figure and what that says about essentially their aura. So creating the mood and giving words to the picture without having words, it's what's most important for me. So these two people are very close to me, and it's a way to illustrate my connection with them. And these are both images that I was a witness to in real life. And it kind of was an aha moment where you see somebody in their light and you see their authentic self and you say, oh my God, I've got to express that into a work of art because it's just so moving to you. And that's what I love about painting. So I'll talk about Alley Cat on the left here. A really close friend of mine, and I used the contrast of the light to kind of illustrate her contemplativeness. She's a really inside of her head type person. She's a deep thinker and an introspective person. And I just love the way her hand was and the veins in her hand. And it's almost brooding. I remember this night she was talking about an ex-lover. So I told her, just stop right there, just stay right where you are. I've got to take your picture. And then within the week, I was making it into a painting. And so that's really special to me. And then Lucy and Sinclair is actually Allison's current partner. So this image to me, it reminds me a lot of their personality. They're more gender fluid and more upbeat and really social butterfly and really loving, open with their lovingness and transparent. And so I wanted to illustrate that. And in general, my work for me and my painting for me are keeping me connected to people that I really care about, and hopefully that will continue on in my work. And just wanted to say thank you to Meredith for really helping me unveil that and helping me discover that. All right, and now I am introducing Professor Woody Holloman.
Thank you, Kate. I teach graphic design at Meredith. I think it's coming up on about 10 years now. And I decided for my contributions to this exhibition that for a change, I would actually document things that I was doing in the classroom rather than just in my own practice as a graphic designer or studio artist. So these are really posters rather than artworks in their own right. And each one documents something unorthodox that I brought into the classroom in the last couple of years. So in terms of this slide, on the left, what you're seeing are some actual game cards for a game I invented to help teach typography. I teach both a beginning and advanced typography class. Many people are shocked when they realize I teach 2 semester-long classes in typography. But I like to say that typography for a graphic designer is like the game of chess. You know, you can learn in an afternoon the basic rules of how to move the little pieces of plastic across the grid. But to truly appreciate the complexities of the game, there's so much more to be learned. There are just years and years, a lifetime worth of subtleties about type. So I decided to capture that whole range of ideas in this this game called Just Your Type. And so it includes everything from questions about the sort of the architecture and the nomenclature of different letter forms, types of letter forms, different categories of typefaces and how to identify them, as well as elements from the history of typographic design, famous typefaces, famous type designers, rules of thumb and best practices of how to handle type as a designer. So I essentially scooped up all these different topics and poured them in to this game that I think has over 200 questions. And my goal was ultimately to have something that would capture pretty much all of the factual knowledge that I wanted students to grasp over that 2-sequence course of beginning and advanced type. And I now treat this as an exam in those classes. A really fun exam, but an exam. So inspired by the success I was having with this typography game, I decided to tackle the other really difficult, thorny topic that I have to teach. And so this game, represented by the yellow cards that you see on the right, is called the School of Hard Knocks. And it's both facetious and serious set of sort of quiz questions about all these nightmarish experiences or scenarios that you can run into as a professional designer or a design studio owner. So I was drawing from my own experience as a studio owner of a 10-person design team. So it's kind of thinly veiled autobiography. Some of these horrifying kind of client designer scenarios that played out here are pretty much verbatim what happened to me. You know, I've changed the names, but I've experienced most of these scenarios myself. And you know, I'm not sort of gloating about how difficult it can be as a graphic designer. What I'm teaching is how you can avoid these nightmares. So I learned just over the course of my career how I could systematically prevent these really difficult situations, legal situations, or other kinds of difficult situations with a client, just by following best practices, by adding clauses to our contracts, our design contracts. So this seems like a really boring topic to teach to, you know, graduating design students. You know, what needs to be included in your design contracts? What legalese do you need there? But it's really important, because if you don't add a certain line, the client might sue you, you know, and might win a judgment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So anyway, so that's what all these scenarios are about, and I gave them jokey names, but they're pretty serious issues. And this was a way to, you know, take this seemingly boring and irrelevant topic of, you know, best design practices and protocols and, you know, contract stipulations, and bring home the fact that it really matters. Your life as a designer could be on the line if you don't pay attention to these things. So, and I should mention too, and both of these games are things I've shared with our Raleigh AIGA chapter, with the National Art and Design Teachers Conference, and so on. So I've wanted to share these ideas with other colleagues so they could use these in their classrooms as well. The center panel is a series of logo concepts that I created for a client. It was a technology, medical technology startup called Catch, with a deliberately whimsical spelling of catch, you know, replacing the C with a Q. So I developed mostly Q-based logos, typographic logos for them. And on the one hand, they seem very simple. You know, I boiled these down to very simple illustrations or geometric shapes. But I was trying to capture a long bullet list about what this science and medical technology really did. So I was having to evoke things like magnifying glasses, you know, cell biology, electrical currents, all these things that relate to what really is a nanotechnology for testing blood samples. That was a totally innovative approach to checking blood samples for disease. And so I had to really rigorously interview this client to get all this information, all this background about their company and about what they do and what's unique about them. And you know, what I did and what I often do when I'm teaching what we call the Circus Design Studio class, right? So we're doing my you know, more advanced design students are actually working for real clients, whether that's a Meredith academic department or business people off campus. You know, so in this case, what I did was I actually brought this into the classroom so I could document all of the stages of interviewing the client, writing the creative brief, generating these sketches, and they could kind of follow along with this and critique my work and see how the whole game played out. The next semester when I taught that course, what I did was to not show them anything I'd done, but to give them all the specs of the job to see what they would come up with. So in various ways, you know, I like to take my own work into the classroom, and I just, you know, it enriches students to see what kind of a difference in the real world these design projects can make. So anyway, so my three pieces are really just documenting my work in the classroom and how I try to make these seemingly boring topics more interesting for my students. So that's all I'll say for now, and I'd like to pass the baton to my colleague, Greg Carter.
Well, thank you very much, Woody. Let's see, my role at Meredith, I teach foundations classes, both two-dimensional and three-dimensional. The images that are in the show come directly out of the fall class that I taught for three-dimensional foundations. They started out as demonstrations of different materials. And when I did one of these demos and I didn't throw the thing away. I saved it and I eventually have turned them into the pieces that we see here. So the pieces in the show are made directly out of all of the things that we do in the 3D foundations class, which I think is kind of becoming a theme for a number of people in the show tonight as they're talking, that I'm trying to show something here that's, yes, it's part mine, but it's also part of what I'm doing in the classroom every day with the students. So what you can see in these pieces is they're very multimedia. They're very colorful, and they use wire, they use mesh, they use a thing called celluclay, which is like a paper mache. That these are all materials that we use in different projects in the class. So I guess it's kind of my attempt to show that, yeah, I use the same kind of things in my work that I that I teach to my students. And the other story about them, you know, what they mean, that's kind of my private side of me. What they mean mostly is the materials that they're made out of. The private side of me, you can tell they're half people, half other things. They're like toys. I was so happy that Molly was able to play with the brain pan of the larva man. So I'm glad that she was able to play with it. I feel bad that we don't get to share these in person because they are very fun to play with. So for me, that's one of the main things of the personal story. That's about all I have to say for my story. So let me introduce Jane Terry.
Hi, I'm Jane Terry, and I teach photography and drawing. I've been at Meredith over 20 years, so really enjoyed my time with Meredith. Okay, I just wanted to see, we discussed whether I'd had the video up or not, but I see we have the still from the video, so that's fine. My work explores the past and present coexisting within oneself. And I find that memory harbors a collection of cells accumulated through the years. And I'm interested in exploring that aspect. Childhood seems to be the most authentic, even as it is the most elusive. So that aspect really interests me too. Over the years, I've become the designated keeper of the family photographs and artifacts, and they seem to have taken on a life of their own. Sorting through these items has prompted me to sort through my own memories, and some are distorted by time and family narratives. So sorting through that has been a process for me. There's one photograph here of my great-grandmother called Anonymous. And that particular photograph was passed down to me years ago. I never knew her, and she was rarely spoken of. Yet I find it interesting that I am her namesake. So that remains a great mystery. She, like so many of my family members in past, are shrouded in mystery. So it's been a process for me of working through that with this particular body of work. So I'm glad you all could be here tonight, and I really am excited that we could have the gallery exhibition under the circumstances. So thank you, Molly, for making this happen. And I'm going to now introduce Taylor McGee.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Taylor McGee. I graduated from Meredith in 2019, and I studied art education and studio art while I was there. I have been the Fibers Artist in Residence working with Emily Howard, and I started last semester and I've been able to continue this semester, which is super exciting. So I am a fiber artist, primarily a weaver, and I also do a lot of natural dyeing as well, and then incorporate some other textile processes in my work. With this residency, my main focus has been on pushing weaving in a more sculptural direction, both on the loom and off the loom. So I do typically work on a floor loom, and you can maybe see my loom behind me here at my home studio. But the work I've been doing has kind of involved adding different processes before weaving and then during weaving, and then when it comes off the loom, um, adding more processes and techniques to that as well. So the piece in the show is an example of this. It's called Cocoon, and it started as kind of a sample of these experiments I was doing of trying out all these different techniques in weaving. It is a double weave, and I know Deb kind of explained what that is a little bit earlier. So it is essentially where you can weave two pieces of cloth on top of each other simultaneously on the loom. And with this piece, I was also exploring techniques like hand dyeing the warp and using some different materials other than yarn. So if, you know, in person, you could see there's like raffia and twine, as well as some of my naturally dyed fibers in there. And so when it came off of the loom, I then was able to manipulate it and turn it into more of an object and play with it as a sculpture by adding embroidery. And then I did put it in a frame. And that's just something I've been kind of exploring as the way to challenge the way that we view fibers and think about fibers. So the other thing that I have been working on in this residency is developing my concepts in my weavings. I tend to work very intuitively at the loom, and concepts definitely kind of develop as I'm working, and there's, you know, things that I'm thinking about. You know, and I often just start with inspiration. I'm heavily inspired by nature or just color in general or texture. But I've really been trying to use weaving as a medium to explore my experience as a woman and also my faith. And these are two things, concepts that have repeatedly come up in my work. And so what I love so much about weaving and fiber art is that as a medium, it does have all of these ancient roots, and it is, you know, traditionally connected to women and women's work. So I found it to be a really perfect medium to explore some of these things. So yeah, this semester I'm continuing to work on the loom and combining weaving with other sculptural mediums as well. And then I'm also very excited because I got a tufting gun, which is essentially going to allow me to paint with yarn. So which is kind of another iteration of the fiber process. And one of my goals is to push this work to be larger, kind of building off of these experiments I did, like with this piece last semester, and make them larger and more immersive. So that is what I will be up to this semester. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And next up is Sherry DiFilippo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sherry DiFilippo, and I graduated from Meredith in, I think, 2013. And I'm really excited to be here. I've looked over at all the people in little boxes off to the side the whole time. And there's so many people that were my professors when I went here and people I went to school with. So it's just really exciting. I'm currently teaching figure drawing. This is my second semester doing that, which I love. I took figure drawing at Meredith, and that was the first time I had ever been able or been exposed to drawing from live models. And that led me to choose to go to school at the New York Academy of Art, which is primarily a figurative school. So that's what I did the whole time I was there. I came back here, and so now I'm working here, but I also teach high school in Raleigh. I'm kind of all over the place with art. I do animation and sculpture and all kinds of other things. But I think if I had to say what my favorite thing to do was, it would just be drawing. I don't know if that's because it's easily accessible and I can carry it around and there's always pencils and there's not a lot of setup. But I draw a whole lot, in lots of different ways, using lots of different materials. And this particular piece is, to me, kind of like a journal entry. I'm not even sure when I started drawing this in a sketchbook, if I ever intended to finish it as a drawing. And I'm not really sure when I thought about animating it either. But I started drawing it last year, right before they shut down all the schools. And my school's timing was kind of particularly interesting because I can't even remember everything that was happening. I think we had hurricanes and flooding, and there were all kinds of other things that happened before COVID that were already causing a lot of instability. And right before our spring break, my niece goes to my school too, actually, and she let me pose her in all kinds of annoying positions on the chairs in the art room so that I could use her for kind of ideas in my sketchbook. And then we went on spring break, and during our spring break, they closed down all the schools. So we literally, a lot of us, we never came back since then. We've never seen the kids. And I left this drawing alone for a while in my sketchbook, but the longer things went on, I just wanted to finish this one idea I had, because to me it was kind of like portraying the weird instability I felt in public school right now, even before COVID happening. I think as a teacher, it kind of feels like being the middleman of all the world's problems. None of the parents agree with any, there's no one opinion about the right way to do anything. Everybody's got an opinion about what you should teach, what you shouldn't teach. If you go on social media right now, you'll see all kinds of opinions about teachers and public school and what we should and shouldn't be doing. And then just thinking about the kids and all the, I mean, for so many years now, but just all the instability and unrest. And I guess to me, this was almost like a journal entry about how it feels right to me right now, sometimes trying to hang in there and stay teaching in public school. As far as technically just things I try to mess around with while I'm drawing, especially recently, just symbolism, figure, and I like playing a lot with light, which I think is especially it's not easier, but doing it in pencil or just being limited to black and white and trying to play with the value range to really make things read as light. So that's basically what this is. It's kind of like, it's almost kind of to me like a little piece of a diary or something. So thank you for listening. It's good to see everybody that I haven't seen in a long time, even if you're just a little box right now. And next up is Dana Lovelace.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. This has been such a joy to see the work. Molly, it was so great to have the gallery tour and the walkthrough. It really it was very enlightening and enabled us to be able to wrap our head around what everyone was doing and really get a sense of them as artists. It was wonderful. Thank you. I am Dana Lovelace, and I teach graphic design at Meredith. I've been at Meredith for 14 years. And I teach graphic design, but also interactive design, animation, basic animation, and computer literacy. Typography is my love. As a typographer, I think it is very important to incorporate type into all of my work. And what I really enjoy doing is working with type in different ways and creating different forms. I explore experimental forms, the meaning of their words and their structures and stories. And altering books allows me to work with my hands and make physical objects, which I don't always get to do. I certainly encourage my students in the classroom to think outside of the box and work by hand, allow their brain to connect to their hands and make things and push themselves to think outside of the box. These pieces that you're seeing here are forms that were created in response to the death of my mother. I was working on and exploring altered books at the time as a medium and felt that this media would allow me to release the emotions and feelings that I was experiencing over her loss. Obviously, losing your mother is a life-changing event. It alters you in a way that you can never imagine. The taking apart of books is very therapeutic for me. And I found that using this process enabled me to transform the book, but also transform myself. The book that I used for this particular altered piece was faith-based, and we can't see the words from here, but if you're able to go take a look in the gallery, if you look at these pieces up close, there are words that are specifically layered to create different meaning. And when you read those words in different ways, you may walk away with a different meaning than what I intended it to be, which is great because it can become a story for you as well. So I was able to look at different words themselves to create a new story. I layered lines of text and connected lines of text to create textural forms, and these forms tell different stories. The piece on the top is called A Ray of Hope. It's representative of the overwhelming feeling that overcame me with my mother's loss. I felt bound and trapped and lost and angry in many ways, yet I always felt a sense of hope through that time. The second piece in the center is called Take Her, and it represents the idea of my mother being taken from me. The lines are, in a sense, a pouring down of my feelings and emotions. And if you can see, there are some small letter forms that are trapped and that are floating, that are revealed, and in some ways become a game of hide and seek, if you will, where I can see my mom and I can feel her and I touch her, but yet she was being taken away from me, and what that represents. And the last piece on the bottom is called Draw Us Near, and it reflects the idea of being sucked into something. It's the idea of something being pulled or drawn farther away or closer. And for me, the idea was wanting to be drawn closer to my mother, but closer to God, closer to my faith, closer to understanding loss and love and the meaning of life in general. So these pieces have great meaning for me, and I really enjoy working on altered books. And again, it allows me to push the realm of who I am as a typographer and what I do in the classroom. Most of my traditional professional work is doing work for freelance clients, from a range of editorial design to website design, book design, poster design, you name it. And I love what I do as a professional designer, but also being able to work on altered books is just so therapeutic, and it's a really great way to tie back to my roots as an artist and as a fine artist, and bring that into the work that I do. And I love being able to encourage my students to do the same thing, and to think outside the box and work beyond the computer, get off the computer. Everything that we do as designers seems to involve the computer, but it's really great to be able to explore different ideas and tell different stories through your work. Thank you guys so much for coming. And our last speaker, last but not least, is Leah Hathcote.
Thank you, Dana. My name is Leah Hathcote, and I graduated in May 2018 with a major in graphic design, and I minored in studio art. I was an artist in residence during the fall 2019 semester, and my mentor was Emily Howard, and I focused on fiber arts during my residency. And I created a large format, 3-dimensional woven wall hanging, measured about 6 feet long and 3 feet wide, and I wove that on a 4-harness floor loom. In this exhibit, I have 3 woven wall hangings. On the left, you'll see You're My Innocence. In the middle is Mama Bird, and the one on the right is Women and Women First. I'll talk about Women and Women First And that one, I'm leaving the interpretation up to the viewer, how they see it and how they want to interpret that, and how they want to attribute meaning to that. The second one on the left that I'll talk about is called You're My Innocence. And that is my first monochromatic woven wall hanging. I wanted to focus for this one on techniques and texture. And I wanted to keep the color monochromatic so that the focus would be on those things, and that using different colors would not take away from that. If you can see this one in person, you can see when you see it up close, you'll see a lot of different textures that I used, a lot of different weaving techniques throughout it. And this was more of an experimental piece. And like I said, this was the first monochromatic woven wall hanging that I've done. So I just wanted to play around with that concept. And the one in the middle is called Mama Bird. And this one carries a lot of significance to me because this is the first woven wall hanging that I created after giving birth to my daughter, Rin, in September. And this one is important to me because it's that first step into the journey of the intersection of motherhood and being an artist, and just taking that first step and learning, you know, how can I be both? How can I fit my art practice into being a mother? What will that look like? You know, how I can just go about that in my day-to-day life, and just learning to be flexible with that. I like to use a lot of secondhand materials in my work, and that is where I find a lot of my inspiration, through searching for those materials and acquiring them, and also just kind of giving them a second life and a new life, and seeing what I can find and then what I can create from that. So I in a way work backwards. So I'm looking first to see what secondhand materials I can find out there, and then I put them together and I go, okay, I'll make this piece. But I really enjoy doing that with my work. All of my works displayed in this exhibit use secondhand materials, found materials, things I already own. I try not to go out and buy new materials. It's just really fun for me, and it's a challenge to do it that way. And I just want to say thank you for participating tonight, and thank you for having me.
Thank you to all of the artists. I know I'm not the only one to think that I am honored that I get to hear you talk about your work. I know that I've hung in and I've read your concept statements over and over again, but it is so much fun to hear your perspective on your artwork and to get to be a part of it. And thank you to all the participants who kept on until the end. It was a lot of artists, but it was worth it. So now begins the question and answer period, and I welcome you to use the chat box. So does anybody have any questions for our artists? Terry Saylor, the author of Put It in the Fruit Bat, says that it was great and impressive, and it was great to see Put in the Fruit Bat featured. I agree, and I can't wait to see what's coming. I have a question. If nobody else does, I'll start the questions. My question is for Kiki, and I wanted to know more about your process.
Hey, sorry about my process. Well, I make marks and then I erase them and I make more marks, and I kind of think of it as expressing marks and then suppressing them, or expressing emotions and then suppressing them, because you know, especially as women and as females, we are stereotyped to be emotional, and I certainly fit that, but I think all human beings are. And so we just have to work really hard, though, to suppress those emotions when we're out in public. And so I didn't, you know, it took me a while to realize that that was what I was doing, but it's a layering process.
Thank you. We are getting a lot of comments. One is from Beth, who is the head of the art department. She has a comment and says that this was wonderful and she misses everyone so much, and she cannot wait to get into the gallery to see everything up close. And then Loretta Roberto says that she really enjoyed this and thanks Shannon for sending me the link. Go Shannon.
That's my aunt. Auntie Loretta. Thanks for coming.
Eric has a question for Dana. And Eric, you're also welcome to turn on your video if you would like. Eric asks, has Dana ever used her torn book technique on graphic design products that she's designed?
Eric, I have not. That's a great question. Actually, some work that I'm hoping to do in the next year is going to involve some altered book work, and I'm hoping to apply that in some various contexts. So I've never really had the opportunity to do that. So that's a really great question. I would love to have that opportunity. So thank you for asking, and I will keep that on my checklist of opportunities in the future. Thank you.
Any more questions? We have a question for Professor Howard from Leah Jensen. She asks, do you think about how a 3D weaving, or do you think about 3D weaving before you start? Do you let the process evolve or sketch or have an idea in mind first?
Hi, Leah. I would say a little bit of all of the above. I definitely do sketches and think about ways of putting the weavings that are, you know, in this exhibition, there are weavings that are in found objects that then become part of a bigger piece. And I actually tried them several different ways before I brought them into the gallery. And then I feel like I wasn't even finished with the process of making this artwork until it was completed in the gallery. And so it's definitely a little bit of process, but also a little bit of sketching and having that idea in mind first. Thank you for the question.
I know we have a lot of students here, and I'm wondering if some of the artists in residence can talk about what that's like going from being a student into being a practicing artist. They can talk a little bit about that experience and then being able to exhibit the work in the gallery.
Yeah, definitely. Does one of our artists in residence want to step up to the plate? Don't be shy.
I can say something, I guess. um, yeah, I guess so. After graduating, I studied art education. So after graduating, I actually started teaching that year. So that was kind of a interesting transition. Just having a full-time job and still trying to keep up with an art practice. But also, Meredith is such a wonderful, supportive community. And I really missed that. It was like hard to get motivated, I guess, to do my own art practice. So having the opportunity to come back and have the critiques, because as an artist in residence, you have regular critiques with the other artists in residence, as well as the professors who are mentoring those artists. So that feedback was amazing to just kind of like coming out of, this 4 years and learning all these techniques and then kind of being like, okay, what do I really want to focus on? You can feel like kind of lost in that. So it was definitely a great opportunity to get to come back and have that feedback and guidance in a supportive community. And I know just like from last semester, it's definitely like changed my work so much already in the direction that I want to go in. So yeah, helps.
Thank you, Taylor. We have another question from Mary Stark for Holly. She wants to know, how did you create the bewitched sculpture with both the young and the older female? Sketch or while sculpting?
Mary, thank you for your question. That is a great question. I make a maquette before I build my large sculptures, and a maquette is a three-dimensional sketch. And that's what I do for all of my large work. That particular piece was made from a slab. The maquette was. The larger piece was coil constructed. So to make that maquette, I rolled out a slab, a really thin sheet of clay, and then I began folding it. And I folded and folded until I got a form that I wanted. And then I refined that form. So I can sometimes invest hours and hours in a maquette, really figuring out my concept and what I want it to look like. And then that serves as my roadmap or my model when I enlarge at on a bigger scale, particularly since I build with the coil method. It's good to know where I'm going before I'm there. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Thank you all for the lovely comments. I'm enjoying reading them all. At this point, I know that we've kind of reached the 2-hour mark for those who have started from the beginning. I didn't want to hit the end button automatically because I feel like as the art department, we're a community. And this Zoom session involves so many people, not only the professors and the staff members, the artists in residence, but it also involves the alums. And this is a chance for you all to connect again if you've lost touch or you just want to say hello. So I'm going to leave the Zoom open and there will be kind of music ambiance in the background, but you are welcome to stay on and chat as long as you want. So yeah, if you have a question, feel free to continue asking it, but I will kind of turn it over to what would be a reception if we could have a reception. Thank you all for coming, by the way.